we're back. And if you're joining us now, we're getting our second conversation for this morning started. And we are talking all about the first ever Belize Investment Summit. And joining us for this conversation, we have Dr. Leroy Almendarez, who is the director of BELTRAIDE. Good morning.
Good morning, Gavin. Good morning,
Good
Marlene.
morning.
Good morning, Belize.
And thank you for joining us. This is a pretty exciting topic. Now, for some of our viewers who may not be familiar, let's start by talking talking about what the Investment Summit is.
Thank you very much, Gavin. And following up on the minister, since tourism is a big part of, the summit. The summit really is bringing individuals together, foreign direct investment or foreign investors, those who are interested in investing. And it's not only foreigners, it's also local investors, those who want to invest locally. And so we're looking at different areas, and it will be a hybrid because you will have only the speakers. Those who want to invest, for example, will be in San Pedro. Others can, actually log on virtually. And so that interaction, we hope the end result of it is that out of all of this, we will have enough investment interest. I mean, as we focus on economic recovery, we're looking at investment as that foundation. And so we hope that the kind of interest that will be generated, based on the, our team is open for business, Belize open for business. Mm-hmm. And apart from that, we're making all the necessary, because we hear about doing business, and Belize is 135 out of 190. And there are certain variables, for example, that we have to look at. So those things are being addressed, right? Those things are being addressed. How long it takes for an application, an investor who is interested, how long it takes for it to leave BELTRAIDE being in the interface. As a matter of fact, being investment and export promotion, until it gets back to that investor, and the investor is ready to do imports and those kind of things. So that's being addressed. We're also looking at policy changes, like an investment policy and strategy, to see how you can make all of these things much easier. It had broad-based consultations. So all of these things will be addressed, and so you'll have interaction. It will include the ministers, for example. Well, it starts with the Prime Minister, because it's his idea, really. Yeah. 6 months ago, he said he wanted the first investment summit, and he said we have to get it done. And so a secretariat was put together, and next week is the reality, the 10th and the 11th.
The idea is to get people who showed some level of interest to come and hear directly from representatives here in Belize, what it will take, what opportunities exist, and kind of how to get the ball rolling. What's the level of interest that we've seen so far, and from where?
The level of interest is great. As a matter of fact, we were marketing in the United States, Central America, Mexico, Canada. Actually, we're doing intense marketing. As a matter of fact, we're even marketing in the Economist. Mm-hmm. So if you go into the Economist, in fact, if you Google these days, you will see the Investment Summit. Something about it pops up when you Google. So the interest has been great, right? The interest has been great, and the areas are diverse, because in terms of the recovery, again, the diversification in terms of interest, investment interest, that's a big thing for us. So the interest is great. You have local investors who either want to expand. You might have joint ventures, right? We're not looking so much into mergers or acquisitions, but those things are possibilities as well. But there is great interest. And so on the 10th and the 11th, we expect that, all those investors coming in, because the interest, when you register on the website, we already know what your interests are, and so it's easier to match. So we're looking at tourism, some light manufacturing. Energy is a big thing, but renewable energy. You have the new Ministry of Blue Economy. Blue economy is big. Tourism, as I mentioned before. Those are some of the areas that we're really looking at. Yeah. And like I said, the interest is there's serious interest even up to now, even though we don't have any more space for those who want to physically come. There are still those who are interested in coming.
So there are registered participants who will be here physically, and then there are others who will join in online.
Through Zoom, yeah. And that's the only option that's available right now. Mm-hmm. Right? If you want to participate, you can participate, and by Zoom, and you will be able to, but just not be physically in San Pedro, because we're ensuring that we take care of all the health protocols. We must comply to the health protocols, so we're doing that as well.
And looking at the registrations that you've seen so far, do you find that these are persons who've already had some level of exposure to Belize, or they're brand new interests?
Some are brand new, and most of them are aware of Belize. As a matter of fact, when you Google Belize these days, it says the last place with respect to paradise, and where cost is, we as much as we hear about cost is still minimal relative to other countries. So most of them have heard about Belize before.
Yeah.
And based on the level of, let's say, feedback from the participants, are there particular, well, before we reach there, actually, I suppose I should ask, in reaching out to get participants, what's the level of interest to participate, and what were the, let's say, the needs or the concerns from people who want to attract the investment?
Well, really, the problem is not a problem as such, but the concerns even from those who wanted to invest before the summit. Some of the concerns were, it takes so long to get a response, and some of those things. So those are some of the concerns. And for example, we say we are open for business, and I've heard people say, but we're always open for business. No, what it means is we have made ourselves more competitive. The foreign direct investment dollar, competition for that is great, especially in a time of a pandemic where it has declined. And so therefore, to make ourselves more attractive, the fact that we are naturally endowed, those things make us even more attractive.
Yeah.
You see?
So let's talk about where you go. I mean, being able to attract people who have an interest in investing to actually turning it into an investment itself, that's going to take the work. Is that what the motive here is, that you don't just get kind of a passing interest from someone, you're able to lock them in?
That's exactly what we want, because even though it's mentioned as a showcase, you want this to be more than a showcase. I mean, really, window shopping does not give you any revenue. And so therefore, for example, we have had interest, like in the case of Cementos Rocafuerte, that's in cement, that was open. And there is interest from Cayman, for example, where you say, okay, they want to expand, how much do you want? What we have indicated as well, as was mentioned by the Prime Minister on September 21st, we have over 500 million in terms of areas at this point in time, that if those things materialize, but then if you have other interests or those who want to join forces with you, that increases the level of investment as well. So we don't want it just to be a passing fancy. We want people to actually be engaged, to be involved. You will hear about all the changes that are being made. And so the discussions will be not only, the Prime Minister, you will have those 6 strategic ministers who will be speaking: blue economy, energy, new growth industries, e-governance, because digitization is going to make us even in terms of access. That doing business report, one of the areas that we score 173 out of 90 is starting a business. And so therefore that's being addressed, where the corporate service, the registry is being digitized, make it easier accessible. But it's not only the registry, you have to register for taxes, GST, Social Security, all of those things you need to do. And so therefore, how long does it take compared to other countries? Those things are being addressed. Looking at minority interests in investments. I mean, many times you find out that if you own 90% and I own 1%, you might, how am I protected when you want to do what you want with the assets? Those things, that's another area that we really did poorly in. But those things, like I said, are being addressed. Now, some of the areas that in terms of how we're doing very well is access to electricity, for example, dealing with liquidation, those things. But still, the doing business report by the World Bank has been discontinued. But it does not mean that we don't have to address those areas that at this point in time are not making us as competitive as we need to be.
And are we, in terms of the size of investments, are we also looking at a big range in terms of like large to small investors as well?
We're looking, micro, small, and medium enterprises, and more small and medium, right? But we're also focusing on startups. Every millionaire started with a concept, we trust, unless you inherited it. And so therefore, even at the summit, you will have pitching by startups. Come with a dynamic idea, have some video, maybe about a minute long, and you'll be able to pitch. And if that materializes, where someone gains interest and have the finances to help to finance that, it can take off. You see? And the intention we're looking at too is to have some kind of competition at some, during the summit or after, where one of these startups can benefit from some funding because of their ideas, and the ideas were selected.
So that's going to be integrated into the summit? Because BELTRAIDE works with a lot of small and micro
Yes.
businesses to kind of get themselves established. Will they have their own version of Shark Tank at the investment summit?
I was going to use Shark Tank, but since you use it, it's
Yeah.
a Shark Tank kind of idea that we have
Yeah.
been throwing around, but like I said, the startups, and you will see it right there on the BIS, the website, or on the Facebook page, startups, come with your ideas, and like I said, we didn't use it yesterday, but I was thinking last night, I said, yeah, it's like Shark Tank. So it's possibility to have that, and Shark Tank works.
Yeah.
I will invest if I can see the feasibility and the sustainability of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You see?
And now, how do businesses participate
Well, you can actually, you could register.
on the website?
You can register on the website. I think for startups, we have 6 startups. I know we have over close to 30 businesses that have been registered. And that's foreign because, like I said, from Mexico alone, you will have 10 interested investors. We do a lot of business with Mexico.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to this, especially Quintana Roo, and so many times when you hear about this, I mean, really, they look at it, and simultaneously, we're looking at materializing a PSA, a partial scope agreement with Belize and Mexico.
Yeah.
So that's just another avenue.
It's also great, I think, for businesses that are looking to move towards value-added products, especially if they're looking at places that are close in proximity. What are some of the other opportunities, other than having an investor buy into wanting to invest in Belize? What are some of the other spin-offs that you imagine will benefit from?
Well, there are some. For example, we have another big thing, and I must include this, is women economic empowerment. That's a big part of the summit as well, and that's sponsored by the Taiwan Embassy. And so what we expect here you will have a greater integration of a woman into the summit as well. And it's not just tokenism. As a matter of fact, that paradigm shifted a long time ago. And so therefore, with that, you will hear about, for energy. That's a big thing. There's so many areas now. For example, you recently heard about the Cahoon industry, or what will become a new industry. That has a lot of value added.
Yeah.
Tourism has a lot of value added. Blue economy. Blue economy, when you think about that, people might say, but what are we talking about? We're not talking about only the surface of the sea. We're talking about under the sea and what exists, because there's an ecosystem under there as well. Mining and all of those things that can be invested in. But once people hear more about it, and again, don't forget tourism, the value added within tourism. And I'm sure if you hear about the minister and how much he's doing and bringing back tourism, we're looking at some manufacturing. We tend to look at light manufacturing, but we're also looking at manufacturing. So there are so many areas. All that needs to happen, even with the startup, bring your concept. We discuss it and help you to look at the feasibility and the next steps, your business plan and those things, assessment of it. What are the material requirements, that you may need in order to get your investment off the ground?
Now, very often we talk about investors in kind of general sense. I think Gavin was asking if they're looking for large investments or not. But then there are also investors, like we've seen in the past, that want to build an airstrip on the reef. What type of due diligence is being done to screen those who understand that we do have 4 parameters as to what will be allowed?
I'm glad you asked, because we will not sacrifice the country for one investment. Sorry, we will not sacrifice the reef for an investment. As a matter of fact, all of these things are assessed. Due diligence, if you say you want to invest, due diligence is done on you as well. Because again, if that is not done, then we might create a situation where it starts to affect us with anti-money laundering and those kind of things. And so the environmental compliance issues, the ECPs and the EIAs and ESIAs, those different things that have to be done in order for someone to get the green light, all of those things will be done. Yeah. So if you're going to say talk about building an airstrip on the reef, and it's going to destroy the reef, I listened to the Prime Minister yesterday at COP26, and he was speaking about how our reef, really second largest, but yet it's being destroyed. We cannot compromise that. Mm-hmm. That is one of those things, along with the Blue Hole and others, that drive tourists to Belize. Those are the things that make us attractive, and so therefore, now looking at investment in so many different areas, the compliance, the procedures, all of those things have to be followed.
And so this has been more or less a year in the making, almost. Can you talk also just a little bit about the logistics and the planning that has gone into all of this, and just all it's taken just to pull it off?
Well, it's like I said, about 6 months, and the secretariat was put together. We call ourselves a group, and then it morphed into a secretariat led by our CEO, who is asked me to give for she could not make it, Miss Narda Garcia. And so therefore we started to plan and looking at what is it, first of all, what are the objectives, because you have to look at your goals. What are the goals? We want to increase investment. We want to increase employment, all of those things. Expansion, we want export-led growth. That comes through investment. So looking at those things, and then we started to plan, where would it be? Where will we target these potential investors? And for the local investors to understand that here is an opportunity for you as well, because any incentives granted to foreign investors, those are also granted to local investors. And so even though, and then again, small and medium, we're not saying you have to be $1 million investor. You can be a medium, because most of our exports are from medium and small enterprises. So we went into all of that. Notice we have a guest speaker, the Right Honorable Stephen Harper, former Prime Minister of Canada. And so people may ask, how did we make that determination? If you look at his history as an economist and what he tried to do for Canada in order to bring them back through the challenges, even with when we had the global financial crisis. And he understands investment. Plus, Belize has a very good relationship with Canada. Part of the Commonwealth and everything else, we do have mutual and bilateral relationship where we benefit from. So all of those things we have to look at. Then we look at our priority areas. The other thing you have to take a look at is, what are those areas of interest? Where does investment stand within Plan Belize, for example? Because that has to be incorporated. You have to incorporate those things. And you hear speak about traditional and non-traditional. Who would have thought that seaweed, something we used to drink, has all its value add, is now being farmed? And because it's not only that it's being farmed, but we have some of the best species. It's just a matter of being able to have the quantity that if we were to export, but consistently, think about how it fills some of those revenue gaps that we need as we focus on recovery. So all of those things are included.
Even things like cannabis. I know that's with,
cannabis.
With the conversation ongoing, there is interest from investors about being able to explore what can happen here.
And remember the derivative, if you will, hemp, right? And the difference between them is the level of THC in hemp and marijuana. 0.3 is when it goes beyond 0.3 in the US, that's considered marijuana, but in Canada it's up to 1%. But it's best to conform to the 0.3, and that's an area of interest as well, because the value added that can come from hemp, the benefits, the oil, and other things you can do from it, for it, or with it. In terms of cannabis, yes, you hear a lot about it, and there are laws, and I know the minister is still consulting where that is concerned, but those are other areas as well. But we must look, because the pandemic and the shock that it had on tourism, for example, which contributed about 44% to GDP, think about how we need to make that up. Even though they're rebounding, but it tells us that there are needs for us to focus even more on what exists within our environment as inputs to generate greater outputs.
Dr. Almendarez, why would you say to Belizeans that they should pay keen attention to the Belize Investment Summit as it takes place next week?
My reason for that would be, first, one, it's the first of its kind.
Mm-hmm.
Two, listen to the the opportunities that you will hear about. There will be so many opportunities. Thirdly, I would say, don't be afraid to take some risk, because that's a part of the problem. You will hear about all of this, but somebody will say, I don't have access to finance, which is a big issue. One of the discussions will be on financing with the central bank and Atlantic Bank and some of the others, where you will hear about some of the changes being made by the central bank. And so what I would encourage here is for the commercial banks to take another look and create what is called a carve-out and to accommodate, because this is one of the things that stifles the MSME sector. Mm-hmm. Access to finance, but not only access to finance means interest rates.
Yes.
And so when you look at the spread, how much does it take for me to borrow $1 and how much do you give me when I deposit $1?
And how
that
long will
spread
it take
can
me?
be reduced, and to pay back. And so therefore, in many cases, we want to see a transition from the informal to the formal sector. But they are afraid to do so because now I need to pay rent and all of those things. It drives up my costs. But if you can create an opportunity for me where I can access finance, affordable financing, and then you can see how I can grow within this ecosystem and become a part of all of this. So Belizeans, and like I said, right now some of the reforms around the MSME sector, which is really, if they were to go, it's like 99% of your whole economy is going there. And so there is a need to focus, but like I said, access to finance, take a little bit more risk. Be innovative, be creative. Nothing is wrong with creating your own path rather than joining everybody. Yeah. Find your own path, and once you can find your own path, many times you will see how that materializes, and that's how an industry is created.
And well, we are actually just about out of time, and I think that's a pretty good note to end our conversation on. Very positive. So Dr. Almendarez, thank you for coming in and joining us, telling us all about the Investment Summit.
All right.
No, you're welcome, and thanks for the invitation.
Okay.
But with that, we are going to be taking another short break, and when we come back, we are going to be hearing all about an upcoming disability conference, and that's going to be right after the break, so please stay tuned.